doing some things that can maybe fix these issues and help you play better or without pain. For some reason I have 2 screens going at the same time, so bear with me for a second there. All right, so disclaimer, this is, we're gonna be going over a bunch of stuff today. This doesn't constitute a doctor-patient relationship. If you have pain when you're golfing or you have an issue going on, you should definitely come get checked out. That way we can really figure out exactly what may be happening. And if you learn something today and you try to fix it on the golf course and you play horribly, I'm also not responsible for that. So I know golfers are always trying to test things out, so let's get into it. So what we're gonna be doing today is we're gonna be learning a little bit about Titleist Performance Institute, their one-on-one golf program, and how it's kind of been changing the game over the last couple decades. We're also going to talk about upper and lower cross syndrome, which I'm sure a lot of you may have heard of. Essentially turns into bad posture. One of the things that happens when you're working on a computer all day. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then we're going to see how does that relate to the golf swing and causes you to have faulty mechanics during your swing that can cause pain, discomfort, or various other things. And then at the end, we're going to do a couple quick tests and see if anybody here might have some of these restrictions that lead to the poor golf swings and the poor performance. So the Titleist screen is a sequence of a couple things. And you're looking at this and you're like, I see a bunch of guys, they're moving a bunch of different ways, and that's exactly what it is. So when TPI first came to be, they developed all these different tests to determine how well a joint is moving, and if a joint isn't moving properly, how does it affect your golf swing? So essentially, we look at every part of your body, your pelvis, your hips, your shoulders, your ankles, your wrists, and we determine if you're not moving well in this position, it's probably gonna lead to this issue during your swing, and how that beats up your body can cause various different injuries and that sort of thing. So we look at how the body moves, then we look at your swing, and based on that, we can kind of determine, okay, they probably have this mechanic versus this other mechanic. At the highest level, they do all sorts of crazy stuff. They have sensors they put on your entire body. They're checking how well the muscles are sequencing, checking how much pressure you're putting in your feet. We don't do that at our office because we don't have a giant analyzing area for that. But the level 1 stuff is good for identifying more simple baseline things when you're not playing at the highest level. So about 25 years ago, somebody came into the game that really changed everything, and that was Tiger Woods. These are all legends in their own ways. You got Ben Hogan, Arnold Palmer, of course John Daly, and then Tiger. Back in the day, these guys weren't going to the gym all day. They weren't working with nutritionists and trainers and PTs and all this stuff. They were hitting the range, they were golfing there, out there, working. And John Daly does none of those things. He just goes out there and plays. That guy's a freak of nature. I don't know how he does it. But Tiger, he came in, and you could see his schedule. 12-hour day in the gym with nutritionists. He's doing all these different things, and when he came into the game, people started to realize that golfers really are athletes, and there's a lot more intricate kind of things that go into it versus just going out there and swinging a club and trying to get it in a hole. So once Tiger came in, Titleist Performance Institute kind of was created, and they've been going for about 25, 26 years. And over that time, they work with all the best golfers. They've discovered so many different things, and it's been pretty interesting to see kind of what they do and how many guys use them. But let's get to the upper and lower cross syndrome. Essentially what upper and lower cross syndrome is, it's an imbalance of muscles that form slowly over time, causing your posture to go into a position where maybe it's not as good for your body. One example is, everybody thinks about the rounded shoulders and that sort of thing there. When your shoulders are rounded because of the posture, it limits how well your body can rotate. So if you guys want to see, kind of cross your arms like this, rotate your shoulders forward, and then try to rotate your upper back. And you'll notice it doesn't move as well as you maybe want it to, so if you put it in the neutral position, it rotates much more. So that's something that when you work at a computer, you're gradually going to move into that position. So it's something that we always see in people, and it's something that if you have limited rotation here, you're going to try to find that rotation somewhere else. In the golf swing, everybody always wants to come all the way back. If your shoulders are forward and you're not able to rotate there as much, you're going to rotate somewhere else. And that's where you start to develop the problems. You put too much strain on certain parts of your body, like your lower back, because you can't rotate in the upper back. And that's when you start leading to injuries. Something that maybe doesn't happen right away, but over time, you know, if you're getting out there and golfing more, you know, as much as we possibly can, if you're a golfer, that's always the goal. You know, you can start to see these kind of issues develop a little bit more over time. So let's talk a little bit about what they are. So upper cross syndrome, poor posture in the front. It's a combination of muscles that get tight, while other muscles that kind of counteract them will get weak. So, you know, the main ones is the tight pecs, pulls you forward here, as well as these muscles up at the top of your neck, which, you know, the upper trap and levator, they go into the neck and they kind of hold the neck in place when you're in this position here working on a computer. Thankfully, April 15th has passed, so you guys maybe aren't doing that as much, but we both know that's not true. So on top of the tightness, there's also muscles that get weak. So the muscles that kind of pull you back into this position, they are constantly off when you're working on a computer. So in order to kind of counteract this, you need to strengthen the weak stuff while you're stretching the tight stuff. And it takes a while to get into that position, so you have to be pretty consistent with the stretching and the strengthening as well. Same thing for the upper body is the lower body. I know sometimes you see people walking around with maybe a little bit bigger, you know, rear ends than others. That's actually partly because they're sitting all the time and they're getting bad posture. Really tight psoas, and they're having weak glutes, so it kind of rotates that pelvis, which, you know, when you're trying to swing a golf club, this position versus that position is way worse at rotating compared to when you're in that neutral spine. And a lot of people like to think, you know, when you're lifting and working out, you know, you kind of want that position. Good for working out and lifting, not great for swinging a golf club because it limits rotation. So you're going to see a trend in here as we kind of go over some of the injuries that start to form. It's always the discs and the ligaments and all the things that support the joint, including the muscles. So when you got upper cross syndrome, like I said, disc herniations, being in this position when you're golfing and just in life in general, it puts your rotator cuff in a more compromised position. Our body's designed to work like this. And if it's like this all the time, they're working a little bit differently, maybe doing the job of someone else, and no one else wants to do someone else's job because you want to do your job the way you're supposed to. So whether it's golf or just life in general, increases the chance of rotator cuff tears. You also get shoulder impingement, you get tension headaches, basically because everything's just working in a position it's not really designed to work in, but you gotta get the job done anyway, so you do it no matter what. So how it relates to golf, it creates something called a C posture. I'm sure you've all seen people that when they go golf, they like bring their shoulders all the way forward like this, and it looks like they're reaching for as far as they possibly can. That's partly because they don't know how to swing a golf club the right way, but also because they're just in that position automatically when they kind of go into it. So when you're in that position, as you guys saw before, you don't have as much rotation. When you try to swing the club, you're just going to either use your lower back to get more rotation, or you're gonna change your complete position, which is gonna throw you off. So like if you go to swing like this and you can't rotate anymore, you're gonna like stand up, lose your posture, which it makes it very hard to come back to where you were before. You know, when you're swinging the golf club, you wanna kind of keep it in plane, you wanna keep everything kind of in line as much as you can. And when you don't have enough rotation in the arms or the shoulders or the upper back, you're gonna lose your posture, and it makes you much worse when you go to swing. So that's typically what we see there. And another big one is straightening of the cervical spine, which our spine has a natural curve. When you're forward like this all the time, your neck gets straightened out, and that puts a lot more stress on the discs and can lead to like disc herniations, nerve compression, and all that stuff that goes down to your hands, which is not very fun. Not to mention the headaches that you get as well. So similar issues for the lower back, you know, leads to disc herniation, you can get sciatica, the muscles are overworked in the glutes and in the hips, and you can lead to, you know, just various different things that cause pain. Like we were saying before, people who have this position, they kind of have that S posture where the kind of the booty comes out a little bit, and that limits the rotation in the lower back. So when you don't have that rotation, like I said, you're gonna either lose your posture, trying to stand up to get more rotation, or you're just putting a lot more strain on the area of your lower back. Can lead to disc issues, and muscles that try to save the disc from getting hurt, they kind of get overworked as well. So, like I said before, how do you fix this stuff? Well, you have to strengthen the weak muscles and stretch the tight muscles. The handout that you guys have goes over a couple pretty simple things for that. Things you can do at home, things you can do maybe on lunch break if you have a little bit of time, or you've been working for the last few hours. So if anybody has any questions or anything like that, at the end we'll go over some of that stuff, but it's a pretty straightforward thing. It's just not something that a lot of people think about because you're busy working and you're thinking about other stuff. So let's go over some of the swing mechanics that cause injuries for people. So there's a lot more than just these 4 swing mechanics, but these are the ones that cause the most issues with pain. Like these 3 cause the most pain, and this one makes you play the worst. The early extension is one of the most common ones, and all of these will actually create a little bit of early extension, but the early extension, when you can identify that you're doing it, that's a hard one to fix, but if you can fix it, it makes you much more consistent. So we'll talk about S posture first. So kind of like what we were talking about before, you can see down here, this is the S posture where the back is kind of has a bigger curve in the bottom. And like I said, it prevents rotation in this lower back. So when you're trying to rotate there, if you're not able to get that rotation like you're supposed to, you tend to stand up. And now once you stand up, you have to get back down to this position, which makes it very hard to be consistent in the golf swing. So having less rotation there puts a lot more strain on the discs and all the ligaments and stuff in the lower back. The muscles are trying to protect the back, so that's why if maybe you're sore at the end of your round or the next day, it could be because not just that you're out there exercising, but because your body's trying to protect itself from this repetitive, stressful action that you're kind of taking. And then conversely, the C posture up top, same sort of thing. When your arms are forward like this and your shoulders are rounded, you try to rotate to get good rotation for the golf swing. And when that doesn't happen, you stand up to try to get more rotation. Again, causes you to lose your posture, makes it very hard to come back and get back where the ball is, at least consistently. You might get through there, but if you're hitting in all different directions or you're coming down and like topping the ball, a lot of times it's because you're not getting down in time to kind of catch up to it. So that's something that we see a lot there. And having the C posture, that rounded posture, it leads to more rotator cuff injuries. Whether it's a repetitive stress injury or it could be tears, things like that. It just kind of primes it for those injuries. You get a little bit more stress in there over and over and over again. And it leads to those unfortunate injuries that kind of get you out of the game for a while. Now this is the one that causes the most injuries, and it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And this one is mostly because of people that have bad rotation in the mid-back and the shoulders, as well as rotation in the hip. So I'm sure everybody has played with someone. It's usually like those old boys that are out there just hacking it up on the weekends, but they go to swing a golf club and they kind of like look like this, and then they come and they swing. So when you swing a golf club, you don't want to have your upper body facing towards the ball. You're supposed to kind of stay in line here, and then as you swing, you kind of bend, your upper body goes away from the ball. That's how you generate some more power. But essentially, if you extend to the left and then you swing and you go all the way to the right, your lower back is just like going in all different directions, and it's just trying to hold on. It puts a lot of shear forces on there. So this is one that you can maybe get away with the other ones for a certain amount of time, but if you have this one, it's only a matter of time before you injure yourself or re-irritate like a disc herniation, which a lot of people have. This one is just not good for that at all. And it's essentially because you're not having enough range of motion, and it just throws everything off there. And as you can see, this guy is completely facing the wrong direction. In order for him to get back, he's gonna have to change the complete direction of his lower back and come through, and that just puts a lot of strain on that lower back there. All right. And just another side, basically you're just overusing your muscles. You're not able to rotate as well, and that's what kind of just puts pressure and strain on pretty much everything in there. And not only that, but it also ruins the amount of power you have. It's so important to sequence your muscles properly and swing properly. using each muscle in the order it's supposed to be. And when you do that reverse spine angle, you're basically breaking a chain in the way. And now you're trying to sequence without a proper, proper connection in the chain. So definitely not something you want to be doing. If you think you have this one, it's something that you got to fix right away. Otherwise, eventually you're going to get hurt. And then of course, early extension, which I'm sure many people have heard of early extension here, right? It's one of the most common ones out there, and it is the number one reason people are inconsistent in the golf swing. So think of it this way. You're in your golf position here, and you start the swing, and then, when you come back, you're trying to get back to the same position you started in. So it would make sense for your body to kind of stay in a similar position to where you start, right? So, if you swing and you come through, it's easy to get back. But if you swing and then you stand up, how are you supposed to get through to the ball like you were before? It just makes it so much harder to get to where you were and be consistent with striking the ball. And there's two different kinds. There's one where you in the upswing, you early extend, and then you kind of come back down into that position. And this one kind of causes a little bit more injury. And then the one where you stand up on the downswing, that's the one that makes it impossible to be consistent. So and you might not be able to see as well, but if you're in this position here and you're kind of coming, you stand up there, there's no room for your hands to come through. So you basically have to just tweak your body in a position to kind of make room for your hands. It's just a cascade of things that just causes you to just mess up over and over again. So this is something you see in a lot of high handicappers. This is not something you see in many of the pros. They nip this in the bud right in the beginning, and they have really developed swing patterns. Now, just because you have some of these doesn't mean that you're going to be bad at golf. John Rahm has, if you don't know, he has an issue with his foot. He's got really limited range of motion, so they figure out a swing that works for him. Everybody's got a swing that works for them. There's no one perfect way to do it, but if you're doing early extension, it's going to be pretty hard for you to stay consistent. And this is kind of what it looks like here. So this guy's kind of maintaining his posture really well here, but as soon as he goes to the downswing, he stands up, and it's going to be really hard for him to get to the ball there. Usually, if you stand up on the downswing, you're going to be really side bending and trying to get low. Puts a lot of strain on that lower back, again, creating those injuries that we kind of see sometimes in the discs and the ligaments and all the muscles and everything. And again, a way to test to see if you kind of have, early extension is to record yourself from the back, and you put a line right on the back of your butt. And if at any point your butt comes off of that line until after the ball is gone, then you're early extending and you're doing something that's going to make it a little harder for you to play whenever you're out there. Just makes your life a little bit easier. All right. So, should we try a couple of these tests here? See if anybody might have a couple of things that we're starting to, that can lead to some of these issues. So the first one is neck rotation. If you can't rotate your neck all the way, say you're swinging back like this and your neck gets stuck, you're going to stand up because you still need to look down at the ball. So that's a big one that causes early extension. So what you're going to do is you rotate your head all the way, then try to touch your collarbone. If you can't rotate all the way and touch your collarbone with your chin, then you might have some restriction. We'll do it to both sides there. Everybody touch your collarbone? Okay. All right, so the next one is a shoulder test. So essentially what you're gonna do is you get in a golf swing position. You guys don't have to if you don't want to, but seated is fine if you kind of lean forward a little bit. Essentially, you're gonna bring both your hands as far out as you can go there and as far as you can go down. So if your hands aren't going past your ears, then you probably have some restriction in that shoulder that could be affecting your golf game. Same thing going down. It should be able to go past your torso. If it only goes to about there, you might have some restriction, because during the golf swing, you basically go through full range of motion of the shoulder as you're swinging. So if you can't go all the way in either of those, there's a good chance that you might have to get rotation somewhere else. Usually it's the lower back, and that's why it gets injured all the time. Right? So the hip rotation one, this one you have to stand for if you want to. But essentially what you're doing is you're going on one leg and you're checking to see how well your hip rotates. If it doesn't rotate 60 degrees in and 60 degrees out, you're missing a lot of important rotation in the hips, and that's gonna all go to the back where you get those injuries. So essentially you have to be able to point your pelvis that way. And I have a little bit of a right hip issue, so for me this one's a little hard, but going in, I have no problem. So if you think about it in the golf swing, when you go like that, you're doing 60 degrees of rotation there, and then as you swing through, 60 degrees of rotation the other way. So the golf swing is very fast, but pretty much all the joints go through their full range of motion, or a decent amount of them do. And then, you know, if you don't have the full range of motion, then it's gonna go, you're gonna get the rotation somewhere, and it's gonna usually be the lower back and get hurt. So, and the thoracic spine rotation, we kind of did that one before. You know, just crossing the arms, seeing how far you can rotate there. If you can't go at least 60 degrees to the one side and then the other side, then that's something that, you know, the rotation is gonna come somewhere else. And it's also not just doing that. If you do this and you feel like your whole body's rotating too, then you're also having trouble dissociating from the lower body. So you should be able to do like rotation of the hips and rotation here while keeping the other one still, which is harder than it sounds, actually. A lot of people always have trouble with that one, so it's pretty funny whenever I see that. But besides that, you know, that's all we got for you. You know, at our office, we do a lot of this really detailed evaluation. We check every joint, all the muscles that support it, and we figure out exactly what's going on so that we can help you play longer and pain-free. And ideally, if you can do those two things, you're gonna be playing better. So. If you wouldn't have any questions or anything, then you just give us a call, but that is all I got for you guys today. So, does anybody have any questions about anything golf related, joint related, or just in general? Sure.
My shoulders and my arms hyperextend.
Okay.
Actually, like I can do that both in and out.
Oh, that's impressive.
And so I've had issues with my swing with that, just because I can't necessarily control it.
So that's a great question, and you know, when you're thinking about joints, I always think about like if it's a very mobile joint, it's all about stability. So if you're having issues with like hypermobility in the shoulder, you know, obviously making sure the swing doesn't go as far, and you know, some people bring it all the way back like that, and you maybe don't need to do that. But it's also about making sure that everything that supports that shoulder is strong. So like the rotator cuff is what kind of compresses the shoulder into that joint, and you know, obviously facilitates all the movement and everything. So if you feel like you're hyperextending or you're overstraining the joint when you're doing it, it might just need a little bit of a swing modification. But really just strengthening all the muscles that just compress it and support that joint is probably the way to go.
Yeah, because it doesn't hurt, it just does it.
It just goes, so you swing and the arms are like all the way back there.
Yeah, like.
I mean, if I saw someone swing and their elbow was backwards, that would be great.
My shoulders do it too.
Yeah.
My shoulders too.
Yeah, but no, that's definitely something that, you know, whenever you have the hypermobility, it's all about stability. Like you just want to stabilize everything that, you know, the rotator cuff, and not just that, you also want to do like the postural stuff we were talking about before, like the muscles in between the shoulder blades that kind of pull it back and keep it nice and strong. Like it's just as important to get it into that proper position so that if you are in a bad position and you do hyperextend, then at least everything's in the position it's supposed to be versus like a position that might be a little bit more complicated.